for me, being interested in the field of leadership, I wanted to think about a book that really inspired my curiosity around what does leadership actually mean. And when I was a boy growing up, the first heroes I admired were superheroes, Batman, Spider-Man. And as I got older, I started to admire what I would call those superheroes that we've all heard their names, whether it's Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela. But without knowing it, I'd unconsciously subscribe to what's known now as the great man theory of leadership. And by the way, it was all men at the time. Now, what's interesting is when you think about the Gandhis and the Kings and the Mandelas of the world, while they are extraordinary people, for most of us, they exist mainly as an idea that in some ways they are inaccessible to us. Well, when I was older, I came across this book called The Leadership Challenge by Jim Kouzes and Perry Posner. And the book just blew my mind wide open because through very diligent research and work out with thousands and thousands of leaders, what Kouzes and Posner did is they democratized leadership. They took it off of the lofty superhero pedestal and they made it accessible to everyone. See, what they discovered is that leadership really isn't about being an extraordinary person. That leadership is about being an ordinary person who can do extraordinary things. So it's less about having a certain belief or identity, and it's more about what is a leadership mindset and what are the leadership skills that can be learned over time. And as I think about this, I want to share a story about a leader I met named Matt, who personifies this idea of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. When I met Matt, he was the #1 ranked district manager out of 100 that the company had. So they had 100 and he was #1. So I asked him, I said, Matt, have you always been such a top performer? He said, no. When I started, I was like 85th on the list and I was down there for a while. So I said, so what changed? He said, when I started as a leader, I thought my job was to be the fixer. That is my job to tell people what to do. See, every day we would get this printout of the key metrics called the daily hot list. So I would scan the report and look for what was in red that was not measuring up. And so I would run from store to store and tell people what to do and try to fix things. And it didn't work. And I did that for years. But then I shifted. I realized people don't want to work for a fixer. They want to work for a leader. So I changed my approach. So he said, I started going in, and when I'd see the store manager, the first thing I'd say is, how are you? How was your weekend? How was your day? How was your family? And I started building relationships. And instead of telling them what to do, I'd share with them the data, and I would ask them, what do you think we should do? And together we'd create a solution. See, what Matt discovered is that really leaders are people that we know. And in fact, in Kouzes and Posner's book, The Leadership Challenge, they found that the people that we all admire, and don't take my word for this, but ask yourself, think about the best leaders you've ever known. They're the ones that are closest to home. So it might be a parent, or a grandparent, or a teacher, or a coach, or a manager, which means leadership at its core really isn't about some kind of job title. It's not about a position or power or authority. That leadership is really about a relationship. And this idea that Kouzes and Posner talk about, that leadership is this relationship, was brought home to me by a mentor of mine named Jeff. So this is about 20 years ago. So Jeff and I were having lunch and talking about leadership. And as we're finishing up, Jeff says to me, congratulations on last weekend. And he hands me this gift wrap present. I said, thanks so much, Jeff. That's really sweet of you. And so he said, go ahead and open it up. See, I had just gotten certified to lead a very complex training the weekend before. And this was Jeff's way of acknowledging me. So I opened up this gift, and inside, and I actually have it right here, so I'll show it to you. Jeff got this t-shirt, right? It says leader on it. I felt really honored because in a lot of ways, Jeff, he's like a father figure to me. So this was a very telling moment. And so Jeff then says to me, oh, no, turn the shirt around. Turn it around. So here's the back of the shirt that says leader on the front. As you can see, it's an archery target. And I'll never forget what Jeff said next. He said, Alain, Welcome to leadership. As a leader, you're always a target. Now, if you're a target that's a great target, you'll be the target of people's hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, even their envy. But if you're a lousy leader, you'll be the target of people's disappointment, their criticism, and their blame. Now, you're always a target. What type of target you're going to be, that's up to you. And so the work of Kouzes and Posner, what they taught me, they found that there are 5 specific things that need to be present for the leadership relationship to be effective. In other words, to be a great target. And the first thing is that leaders need to model the way. This is about clarifying what are your values and then leading by example. Albert Schweitzer once famously said that example is not the main thing in influencing others. It's the only thing. And so the first part is you have to walk the talk, practice what you preach, as it were. Second principle is inspiring a shared vision. So it isn't enough for you to have a vision that's inspirational. You need to ask people and draw out of the visions of what is inside of them. Third is the willingness to challenge the process and stepping forward and being creative and taking risks. And that's all about the willingness to fail and having a new frame for what failure means, that actually failure is about learning. The fourth principle is about enabling others to act. How do you create an environment where people can thrive? If you've studied anything about what's now known as behavioral economics, is that as much as we think we are agents of free will as humans, we are incredibly susceptible to the environments that are around us. So what can we do to create systems and cultures that support people so they can live and work at their best? I think Edwards Deming said it very well when he said, if you put a good person in a bad system, the bad system will win every time. And the fifth principle might be my favorite one, is great leaders encourage the heart. Because much more than we are rational beings that feel, we are actually emotional beings that think. And creating the connection, that strong emotional bond. Maya Angelou said, people don't care how much you know. They won't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so for me, realizing these 5 principles, which all have specific behaviors, that means that great leaders aren't born. People ask me that sometimes. They say, are great leaders born? I say, well, all leaders are born. No one was hatched from an egg last time I checked. That being said, great leaders are made, and they are made through a series of principles and then converted into a series of behavioral practices that they build and develop day in and day out. And that ultimately, leadership progress comes from leadership practice. And the people that inspired me to see leadership through that lens and has really informed my thinking ever since are Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner with their book, The Leadership Challenge.